Let's talk today's Beyond the Gates. It's July 30th, 2026, and this was a little misleading this episode because the first half of the episode, I really thought that not a whole lot was going to be happening. And I was pleasantly surprised as we got into the last half of the episode that we were actually getting real movement in the Kill Bill story. So today was a surprisingly good episode, even though I was expecting it to be one of the more traditional characters getting together and just catching each other up with information that a lot of us already know. But again, as I've often said in other videos, that daytime soaps often have to repeat dialogue. They often have to repeat talking plot points because viewers don't watch every day. You know, the average could be 2 to 3 times a week. So there's a good chance that somebody tuning in today on Thursday might not have watched Tuesday or might not have watched Wednesday or Monday. And so they want to remind those people of what is going on so they don't feel lost in the episode. Now, one of the interesting things about Beyond the Gates is that in the last year and a half, the plotting hasn't been that intricate where a viewer who tunes in is, after not watching for a few days, would get lost in the story. They do a good job of really keeping in dialogue viewers up to date as to what is going on. So that's a really good thing. The show, I think as it evolves, it will get, some of the stories might get a little bit more complicated. One of the things that me as a viewer has some trouble is just remembering things from year one and making sure, asking, does that match up with what they're telling me now? And that's just because they produced 200 episodes last year. 200 episodes is a lot to remember. So sometimes something very specific might have happened in an episode where they gave us a piece of information and I just don't remember it. And then I call on other people to remind me of what might have happened. But anyway, let's just jump into today's episode. So we start off at Bill and Haley's house. Bill is sitting on the sofa and he is looking at his phone, thinking back to the tremors that he's been having in his hand. Because remember, Bill is going through a bunch of health issues, but nobody can quite figure out what they are. He has a flashback to his hand shaking. He looks at his phone and he's in his contacts and he's looking at his Dr. Madison Montgomery. He's looking at her contact page, thinking about getting in touch with her and doing more tests. At that moment, his wife, Haley, walks in and she says, "We made an agreement, no screens until after lunch," which is really weird to me because Bill owns a major law firm. And he himself, when he was in the hospital, said that his staff made a mess of things when he was out. And he was only out for like half a day and, maybe overnight. He even sent his daughter to clean up some stuff for him, which caused some conflict with Tomas. So I'm kind of confused as to how Bill can cut out screens until after lunch when according to him, his staff is not that good. Now, that's also telling of Bill as a manager, because if you can't be out of the office for a day or two and everything falls apart, then that's a management issue. But we got to get Bill back to health before we can start giving him seminars on how to be a good and effective manager. So Haley, because remember, Haley's trying to kill Bill. So Haley has a conversation with Bill where she is telling him not to continue getting tested by Madison. Because remember, Haley and her cousin and cohort, Randy, had a conversation a few weeks ago where Randy said, Madison's going to keep digging. She's a part of the family now because she's engaged to Bill's daughter, Chelsea. She's going to keep digging until she figures out what's wrong with Bill. We don't want that. So Haley is trying to persuade Bill to stop doing testing with Madison because she doesn't want Madison to find the poison that's supposed to be untraceable. A lot of us think it's just tap water that she's giving him, but something is definitely going on with Bill. So it probably is poison, and now that she's giving him more and more of it, it's starting to take effect and hitting his body. It's just hard for the doctors to trace because it's probably something that they're not actually looking for. So Bill agrees that he won't continue getting tests with Madison. At the same time, his daughters Chelsea and Naomi are over at the coffee bar, and they're having a discussion about their father's health and how they have to band together to team up on him and convince him to go back to the hospital to continue getting tested by Madison. So they also talk about Haley isn't doing what she needs to do as a wife to ensure their father has good health, so it's up to them. So they go over to Bill's house. They just barge in. Bill and Haley used to have a security system where, they could see on their phone who was at the door. I guess they left the door unlocked, as people do in the gated community. Except for Danny. People tend to knock and ring the doorbell at Danny's house. But anyway, So the girls come in. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. The girls came in and they go at their father about going back to the hospital, working with Madison to figure out what's wrong with him. Haley says, we're not going to do that. Bill's like, yeah, we decided we're not going to do that. They get on Haley about her spa days and all that stuff. And Haley's like, well, it was your father's idea. And Bill says, yeah, it was my idea. And they're just besides themselves. So Haley basically tells them to butt out of it, that they've got it handled. And they're like, this is the great confrontation. Because last year, or even earlier this year, Naomi and Chelsea would have moments where they would soften towards Haley. But I think the idea of losing their father and seeing the laissez-faire attitude that Haley has had about it has really kicked them into overdrive and reminding them of why they hate her and why they, that she broke up their parents' marriage. And they even say later in the episode that if her father was still married to their mother, even if he insisted that she go do a spa day, Danny wouldn't leave his side. So Haley ultimately kicks the girls out. She tells them to get out. And they say, you can't kick us out of our father's house. This is a family matter. Dad, we should talk alone. Haley says, you're not going to kick me out of my own house. Or you're not going to dismiss me from my own house. And Bill ultimately tells the girls it would be better if they leave. They are flabbergasted because they can't believe that their father is kicking them out of the house. So the girls do leave and they head over to the country club. Now, Haley later brings Bill a glass of water, but with the smirk on her face, we're to assume as viewers that Haley has, put her magic potion in the water, and she's talking to Bill about how she wants to make him disappear. Now, what she means, what we know is she wants him to die. What she means to him is that she's pitching him on the idea of going to St. Bart's and getting away so that he can rest and get some relaxation and get himself back to health. Bill says he can't really do it. He can't get away. She's like, your schedule is clear. All the things that you needed to do, Tomas can take care of when he comes back. Hopefully Tomas isn't coming back. But eventually Bill relents. But he says, before we do that, we have to have a conversation about how you treated my daughters. So that's how we end on Bill and Haley for today. That conversation will most likely pick up again tomorrow on Friday. Now, Chelsea and Naomi hightail it over to, because remember, they're in Fairmont Crest. They're at their father's house. So they hightail it over to the country club where they run into Kat. Kat earlier was having breakfast with Martin. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So Kat runs into them, and they update her on their run-in with Haley and Bill and how how they kicked them out of the house. Kat, while nobody else stands up for Kat, Kat stands up for everybody else. She is appalled. She is beside herself. She can't believe that this has happened. So they all sit down and they are starting to compare notes about Haley. Now, Naomi tells them how one day she walked into Bill's office and he was choking and Haley was just standing there. Now, Chelsea's like, I'm not a Haley defender, but maybe she was just in shock. Naomi's like, yeah, that's what she said too. And Kat, our Catlock, the only person with a brain, says, is she trying to kill your father? This sounds like the podcasts that I listen to. So, because we know Kat loves these true crime podcasts. So they continue talking about what they know about Haley. And Naomi finally says, I really think that Haley was really using me for information on cracks in our parents' marriage when we first met so that she could use it to break up my parents' marriage. Ding dong. Yes, she was. We all saw the flashback. So it's like, for some hotshot lawyer, Naomi's taken a long time to figure it out. So that's when, Kat is like, this feels like when the wives are planning to kill the husbands. Something just doesn't feel right. And then Naomi's like, oh yeah, I have another piece of information, because Naomi's been holding on to all sorts of things that we know, but other characters don't know. She tells them how Haley faked the ultrasound, and the excuse she used was that she was so afraid to have an ultrasound at the hospital that she printed one out online. Well, Kat and Chelsea are like, what in the world is going on here? And, one of them says, I think it was Kat, was she even pregnant? Asking all the right questions. So then Chelsea says, because then it's like, well, maybe if she was having an affair, it would be easier to catch her. And Chelsea talks about how she walked in on Haley having an intense conversation with that guy who helped her when she had her miscarriage, Sammy. And at that moment, Danny walks in because she had been over at Nicole's house. We'll talk about that. And she's like, what's going on? She's like, oh, that guy, Vanessa says his name is Randy. So everybody's confused. Everybody's confused now. And then they drop on Danny that Haley and Bill kicked them out of his house. And Danny, the look on Danny's face, all hell. We know in the spoilers for tomorrow that Danny confronts Bill. I assumed that it was just another confrontation about him keeping their secret that they slept together on the elevator during the tornado. But now we know that she's going to confront Bill about kicking the daughters out of his house. So that should be a really explosive conversation tomorrow. Really looking forward to that. But there was so all this kind of happened. This conversation really happened in the second half of the episode. So that's what I mean when I was a little pleasantly deceived by the first half, because it felt like it was just a catch-up episode. But then they really sped up people talking about Haley and Bill, and we're starting to get a lot more movement in the Kill Bill story. And, this story has had a lot of stops and starts. I think sometime next month or early September is when it will be a year of when we found out that Haley was actually a con artist and this was all a setup from the beginning. So, this is a story that's been going for a long time. So and because the pacing has been a little wonky, it's time to accelerate it and start moving it in a direction of big reveals. So really looking forward to that. Over at the hospital, Ashley and Shanice were talking about all the I love yous. I don't really want to even get into the stuff that happened at the hospital. I love you, I love you, I love you is now taking the place of the BRCA gene in dialogue. Remember, for a long time, and we still hear it, but probably we won't hear it as much. But for a long time, we kept hearing about the BRCA gene, the BRCA gene, the BRCA gene. It was, peppered into dialogue. And purposefully, because both Danny and Naomi have it, and it was passed down genetically through Anita and Danny bear some guilt, even though they shouldn't, because they feel like, Anita feels like she passed it down to Danny, who then passed it down to Naomi. Danny feels guilty about passing it down to Naomi, even though, they had no control over it. But it just feels like Ted told Shanice he loves her. Shanice told Ted she loves him. It's been days and days and days of this. We get it. We completely get it. We don't need to hear it anymore, but I think we're going to be hearing it some more. Ashley also said that she calls Grayson her boyfriend now, if anybody cared. So Andre visited Ted again in his office because remember, the last time Andre visited Ted, they got interrupted by Shanice. And that last time, it seemed like Andre wanted to talk to Ted about Champagne Gate, but today, but that got interrupted. And then today, Ted was too focused on himself and his trip that he's taking with Shanice to New York City. And he showed Andre the itinerary. And then he asked Andre about some champagne choices because Ted arranged for a private dinner at a museum for Shanice in New York City. And they sent the menu over, but he was having problems picking out the champagne. So he asked Andre's opinion, which triggered Andre because champagne is a triggering thing for him because they got that mysterious bottle of champagne, he and Danny, as a late wedding gift. But Andre pretty much knows who it is, and we know somebody is watching Andre. So Andre gives him the suggestion, and that was pretty much it. They didn't get into anything about, Andre's issues, even though Ted thought that something was going on with Andre, but they really didn't get into it. So, yeah, I really hope that the Andre secret includes Andre's parents. I really hope that one or both of them are still alive and that maybe the plane crash was subterfuge because they're in the DMV, DC. They spent, the family, maybe one or both of the parents were spies and the plane crash was, they're being held hostage or they've gone into hiding, and maybe Andre knows something about it. So I'm hoping that Ted's brother and sister-in-law tie into this mystery somehow. It could also be that Andre has a wife, a child, a lover somewhere over in Europe, and they're back because they want another chance with Andre. I hope it's something a little bit more interesting. I hope it's a bigger mystery than that. But we'll see. We'll see because, Andre lying about his parents being dead is a bigger reveal than Andre. He was single. He was a jet setter. We know he was a playboy. Andre, he didn't tell anybody about it. But, other than causing trouble for Danny and Andre, listen, they've got trouble coming anyway because the reveal of Bill and Danny sleeping together, is going to happen. Andre and Ashley had a conversation again. They had this conversation yesterday at Uptown. They had it again today about how happy they are with their current partners. I hope putting them in scenes together isn't a precursor to them actually ending up together because Danny and Andre's marriage blows up because of one or both of these secrets. Martin goes to the hospital after he has breakfast with Kat to see Ted, but they don't end up really sharing a scene together because he gets called away. But he is there for some of the I love you, I love you, I love you. Shanice loves Ted. So is Nicole. Nicole walks off the elevator hearing the I love you. And Nicole's like, everybody knows, Ted. Everybody knows, and everybody's happy for you. Kyle sends Nicole a calendar request because he wants her to have access to his calendar so she knows where he is. She accepts it. They smooch in the hallway of the hospital. Where is Dr. Monica? Why isn't she putting it into all this? But we'll talk about Kyle and Nicole earlier in the episode in a minute. Kat and Martin had breakfast. I mentioned that. And this felt like from the writers and producers, here, damn, we're giving you Kat and Martin. They're not talking about Eva. Martin's being nice to her. Get off our backs. Excuse me, I need a drink of water. So Um, Martin's asking Kat what she talked to Smitty about last night at Uptown. She's like, I really can't say because I don't want to like give up my spot at being a source. And he's like, oh, it's about one of his stories. We have an agreement. Like, I don't get involved in that. So I won't ask you any more questions. Then they start just catching up about Tyrell going off to college, Tyrell and Jessica. Samantha is measuring Tyrell's room because she wants to have a studio like her aunt. And, just fun family stuff. But they then also talk about how, Ted and Shanice are very serious and have exchanged I love yous. Kyle and Nicole seem to be very serious. Kat is like, are we going to get a new stepfather for Christmas? And they talk about how they would feel if their parents remarried to other people. And Martin's like, I'm ambivalent about it because there's a part of me that's okay, but there's a part of me that would like to see them get back together, and Kat feels the same way. But they're both adults and they do understand that their parents right now are divorced. I don't want Nicole and Ted to get back together, but I feel like it's a road we're definitely heading towards. When we meet Kyle and Nicole earlier, they're in Nicole's bedroom and they're fooling around. And Nicole notices Danny standing in the doorway. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hijinks. It's a lot of comedy. Danny's being a pest. Nicole kicks her out and says, I'll meet you downstairs. Nicole meets Danny downstairs. They have playful conversation. They talk about intentions. Danny's like, I asked Carlton what his intentions are with my sister. I will go up to the shower and ask Kyle the same thing. And Nicole is like, we're just having fun. And Danny's like, well, no, because Kyle seems to be putting down roots. He bought a place in Barrington Towers, which is 10 minutes away. And Nicole's like, well, no, he actually leased it, which a lot of us thought he bought it, but he actually did lease it. So now it makes sense that he only leased a 1-bedroom apartment. And that's why there's not room for Noah there, even though I guess Noah could sleep on the sofa. But anyway, and Nicole is like, Barrington Towers is near the hospitals and the clinics and everywhere that he, does work at. But Nicole doesn't want to do love again. She's open to maybe doing something exclusive with Kyle. She didn't, this isn't like I'm open to doing something exclusive with Carlton or Kyle. It seems that Kyle is the clear winner in this contest, but we'll see what happens. But ultimately, Danny is there because she needs advice about how to deal with Naomi and the preventative surgery that she's thinking about having. So Nicole gives her a little bit of advice. They exchange their little, I love you sissies and, all that stuff. So it was very nice. I love when Nicole and Danny have scenes together. Carla and Daphne have amazing chemistry together. You buy that they really care about each other, about these two sisters really care about each other, that they really love each other. Things will blow up when Nicole finds out about Danny and Bill, and we'll see how understanding or judgmental she is. But regardless, conflict between siblings on soaps is a good thing. We've seen conflict between these two before, and it doesn't really last that long. So I'm not really worried about an indefinite crack in their relationship. Martin goes over to the hospital specifically to see Ted, but he sees Kyle on the elevator, and he wants to thank Kyle for helping Smitty when Smitty got hurt by the 83-year-old man playing pickleball. Please get them some gay blackmail, friends. So he gives Kyle an envelope, and Kyle thinks it's like cash, and Kyle's like, no, I can't take it, but it's tickets to the Washington Commanders game. And because I guess Nicole had mentioned to Martin that Kyle is a fan, and so he could take his son Noah to the game. That was very nice. It was like, I'm not a big fan of Martin's, but it was a very thoughtful gesture. And the maturity of being able to, and both Kat and Martin have shown maturity in being able to deal with both Shanice and Kyle and Carlton in their parents' lives, which is, a good thing because Martin's like 35 and, Kat is 25, 26 years old. So, it's good to see. I understand the uneasiness because it changes the family dynamic, especially if marriage becomes, part of it. But I really do enjoy how mature they're being about their parents moving on in different relationships. So yeah, the Erica, that's my dog Erica. She's hearing noises and protecting the house. She wants to make sure nobody comes to get me. But it was a really good episode. The last half made up for a somewhat sluggish first half, but it was only sluggish because I didn't know what was to come, which is a sign of good writing. So, when I look back at it, I'm like, well, maybe it wasn't so sluggish. Maybe it was just that they were really setting up the really good stuff for the second half of the episode. But yeah, I mean, it was a little slow. Sluggish is a little hard. It was a little slow in the first half, but it definitely gave us a payoff in the second half, and completely looking forward to tomorrow. So, yeah, I'm very excited to see how the Kill Bill story starts to play out and starts to heat up, and how many of our characters will be involved in that, and what the ultimate outcome will be. Will they find out that Haley is a con artist? Will Randy be exposed as a con artist? Will Joey protect Randy? Will Haley pay some sort of price? Does Haley know more about Bill's dealings with the Duprees than she's let on, and use that as leverage and blackmail so that she doesn't go to jail and gets like a payout instead, so that she remains on the show? There's a lot of possibilities of how this ultimately plays out. I'm super curious, and I'm going to continue to tune in to see what happens. This is Ed Talks TV. We'll see you later.